This is part 2 of the tutorial on Examview competencies, and in this section we'll be looking at editing tests created in Examview. We're going to look at actually two parts. We're going to look at editing questions, but then we're going to look at editing the appearance of the test. So let's start out with editing a question. To edit any single question, you simply take your cursor and highlight that question and go down to the bottom of the menu and click on Edit, or you can double click on the question. This brings up the edit box. Once you have the edit box up, you can edit anything in the test. So I could go in and I could actually change this to glucose, and then I would have to actually edit the subscript C6 H12 06, and then I would need to change one of my answers to be 24, which is now the correct answer. So you notice I edited the question, I edited the answer, I edited which one was the correct answer just by going to those pieces in the question and changing those. In the general edit box, there are also a few other things you can do. Down at the bottom of the box, record is when I'm going to save this question. I could change the answer from down here to A, B, C, or D. I could scramble my answers. I could limit the choices for this particular question to 3 or 2, or I could insert new ones. Like I decide to make this a little more difficult. I'm going to put in 22 and none of the above. And I know students love those kinds of questions when you do that. And then I can alter the number of columns. Now I will say this, the choices section right here, when you look at this, is not where you want to edit a test for special ed or IEP students who have less than 4 choices. I will show you in a little bit in editing the test how you can do all of the multiple choice questions at one time. But if I just want to change this one, I can do that. So when I finish, I simply hit record, and you'll notice now it's changed my question and added the answers that I wanted to add to that. So just in review, all we did was highlight the question and go down and click edit, or double clicked it. This time we'll just hit edit. It brings up the edit box. I can edit the question, the answers, which answer is correct, or some of the other features right from here. When I get done, I record that question and it changes the edits. So that's editing a question in a test. To delete a question in a test is very simple. So I don't want question number 7. I can simply go down to my delete button and hit delete. Yes, I want to remove that question, and you'll notice question 7 is gone. 8 is now renumbered to be 7. The other way I can do it is simply highlight the question like number 5 and hit the delete key on my keyboard. It brings up the same remove question box. Yes, I want to remove that. That's gone. So we've edited a question. We've removed a question or deleted a question. Now I want to put a new question in this test. So I simply come over to the bottom and say I want a new question. It brings up the new question box. I choose the type I want. I want a multiple choice question. I say OK. It's going to tell me that new questions in this test will only be in this test, but for right now that's alright. We're going to put it in the test. In the middle level competencies, we'll show you a way to put it in question bank. So now I simply type in my question. This is my new question. Is it good? So I scroll down. My first answer is yes. My second answer is no. My third one is maybe. My fourth one, I have no idea. And then I have to choose one of those as the correct answer. You can remember I can check it up here, or I can go down to my answer box, pick my answer. I finish my new question. I want to save it, so I hit record. It has been put in at the bottom of my multiple choice section. There's my new question, and actually saved it in that test. So really what we've done very quickly is we've looked at how to edit an existing question simply by double clicking on it, how to delete a question simply by highlighting and hitting delete here or on the keyboard, and then finally how to add a question by simply going to new, or an alternative version is to go up to question, new, which kind you want, and it does exactly the same thing. So that's editing a particular question. Now let's look at editing some of the features of the test. And I'll tell you, most of your edit features under your top menu are going to be under the heading of question or test. To start with, under question, I'm going to show you a couple different ones here. The first one is reorder. And let's say the questions that I pulled in are not in the specific order I want them. Then this lists all of my questions. I can simply grab number 9. I actually want it under number 5. I can pull it up and drop it in. I want number 8 down below after number 17. I drop that in. Now what it will not do, it will not let me take a multiple choice and pull it in the true-false section. But it will let me take the multiple choice and drag the whole section above the true-false section. Now you'll notice in this case the numbers have not changed, but when I hit OK, it's going to make those changes to the test. So you'll notice now my multiple choice is first, and it renumbers the entire test. And then after my multiple choice section, that's where I find my true-false section. So the first one was simply test or question, reorder, and then it's simply a drag and drop box. I drag them to the place that I want them to be. It will not allow you to mix the sections. So that's reorder. Also under question is adjust choices in columns. Now this is where you want to change a test for all of your students that have an IEP or special ed, that have a accommodation where they have less than 4 choices. I say simply reduce the choices for the multiple choice questions, and I want to reduce them to 3 or 2 or whatever number I request. Also, if your accommodation is having the multiple choice answers in one column, like again for the whole test, set columns. I want to set those to one answer, and then I would say, now best fit is if it's longer answers, I'm going to separate them so it makes more sense, and then I simply hit OK. It will tell me I'm going to lose some of the answers, and that's pretty obvious because we're reducing the choices. So when I do that, you'll notice it has reduced the answers from 4 answers to 2, and it has put the answers in a single column. The only ones it will not do that with are all of the above or none of the above questions. If it's an all of the above or none of the above question, and I'll see if I have any on this test, and I don't see any, it will leave the original 4 choices, and then you could go into the individual question and do it. So under question, we looked at reorder, and we looked at adjust choices in columns. Now the other ones we're going to look at under test, headers, and looking at the header on the first page, this is where I change what I want my test to say. So I have this labeled Mr. West Chemistry 2010-2011, but it's a biology test, so I need to do this one for my biology class. This is Biology Test A. Now, if I only want it on this test, I'm going to go down to the bottom and hit record, and it will change it, but only for this test. If I want it to always say this, I would click Save as Default. So in this case, I'm simply going to click record, and now my test is Mr. West Test A. Also under test, we have layout. Layout deals with a lot of things. First of all, under questions, one of the ones you want to look at here, question spacing is at 0, so it hasn't left any space between my questions. If I want to change that, I can actually move it up, and you'll see what happens to my test. So I'm going to say OK on that, and you'll notice now the spacing between my questions. Back to test to layout. Also under layout, question types. This is where do I want the sections to be mixed? If I do, I'm going to check that and allow them to be mixed. Under answers, this is nice for teachers. Normally, problem and essay are not checked, and neither is short answer, and what that means is Examview does not leave an answer blank underneath the questions. If you want an answer blank underneath those, then I would check those and then save that as my default, and that would mean that on any new test it actually saves space for me. For some of my IEP students, I might want the answer lines for my open-ended, then I would check that box and it would actually put lines underneath the question. Answer key. All of these items will show up on the answer key because they're checked by default. If you don't want all those things on your answer key, then you would simply uncheck them again and do that save as your default. You might just want the answer in the state standard if it's available on there when you go into that. So all of these give you options where you can start changing how things look when you go into test. All of that was under test and under layout. And then finally, also under test, is translate test to Spanish. This will only work for questions that were already in the question bank. This will not translate questions you've created or questions you've edited. But the questions that were already there have a Spanish version. So I'm going to click on test. I'm not going to save it. I'm going to translate it to Spanish. There is the test in Spanish. To get it back to English, I'm simply going to go test, translate test to English. Oh, I don't want to save the changes. Test, translate test to English. The test now is back in the English formatting. So we looked at question, reorder, adjust choices and columns. We looked at test, headers, layout, translate test to Spanish. All of those things edit the way the test looks when you go into it. Also, if you want to edit the font of this test, and go edit, replace font. I can change all fonts, I can change just headings, I can change the specific fonts in the test, and I can replace it with anything else I want to choose from the list. So I actually want to change all the font to Arial, and I want it to all be size 15. And I'm going to say yes, and that replaces it all. Finally, to end this one, I want to talk about printing the test. When I go to File and I go to Print the Test, it's going to ask me how many versions of the test do I want to print. As soon as I choose more than one, 2 or 3, it allows me to choose scramble sections, scramble multiple choice answers, any or all of those. When I hit OK, it's going to print the test with the answer keys. And if I want an answer strip for like the multiple choice and matching in true false, I can click answer strip, print that, it will print that off. So to recap, we've looked at editing questions in a test, deleting the questions, adding new questions, and then we went back and looked at changing formatting in the test, mainly under test, headers, layout, translate, under question, reorder, adjust choices and column, and under edit, replace font. Then we looked under file, printing, how to print various versions of the test, and then how to print the answer strip. Hopefully this has been helpful. If you finish this, you're now ready for part 3, which will take you into looking at customizing it for a state, and then also getting help for Examview. Thank you for listening.